Who did you give your children's outgrown clothes recently? Dr. Afani asked, his voice calm but firm. Welcome to Treeside Tales, a home of beautiful African stories. Inky was married to Chief Amadi, a wealthy and influential Igbo businessman. Their life was a picture of luxury and comfort. They lived in a sprawling mansion in Lagos, complete with marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and everything money could buy. Ianai, with her grace and poise, was the heart of their home, a devoted wife and mother to their 3 beautiful children. Though life had blessed Ianai with wealth and privilege, she never forgot her humble beginnings in her village. Every Christmas, Chief Amadi insisted that they visit the village to reconnect with family and the community. This tradition reminded them of their roots and the values that shaped their lives. That Christmas, as usual, the Amadis packed their luxury SUVs with gifts and foodstuffs and made their way to the village. The house was abuzz with activity as they handed out gifts to relatives and neighbors. One afternoon, Ianai decided to take a walk to the village market, where she ran into her former colleague from when they were still single, Uchi. Uchi's appearance shocked Ianai. Once vibrant and full of life, Uchi now looked tired and frail. Her clothes were worn, and her sandals were falling apart. She carried a small basket of vegetables she hoped to sell for a few naira. Ianai, is it really you? Uchi's face lit up, despite her weary look. Ianai, she exclaimed, hugging her tightly. It's been so long. How are you? Uchi hesitated before answering, her eyes welling with tears. Life has not been kind. My husband has no work and we can barely feed our children. Every day is a struggle. Ianai's heart broke. She couldn't bear to see her friend in such a state. Uchi, come to my house tomorrow, she said firmly. I will do something to help you. The next day, Uchi arrived at the Amadi family's grand village home, a stark contrast to her own. Ianai welcomed her warmly and led her to a seat. I cannot solve all your problems today, Ianai said gently, but I can help you get back on your feet. She went to her children's room and carefully packed their outgrown clothes and shoes. She added bags of rice, oil, and other foodstuffs. Finally, she placed a generous sum of money in an envelope and handed everything to Uchi. Take these for now, Ianai said. When we get back to Lagos, I will speak to my husband. We'll find work for you and your husband. Uchi was overwhelmed. She fell to her knees, tears streaming down her face. Ianai, thank you. May God bless you and your family. Ianai smiled and helped her up. No need to thank me. That's what friends are for. As Uchi walked home with the gifts, a storm of emotions brewed in her heart. At first, she felt gratitude, but the closer she got to her small, crumbling house, the more envy began to take over. She looked at the clothes, shoes, and money in her hands and thought of Ianai's mansion, her fine clothes, her children who lacked for nothing. Why doesn't Ianai have everything while I have nothing? She thought bitterly. We worked together, and I was even earning more than her back then, but look at where she is and look at me. When she reached her house, her children ran out to greet her. Their excitement over the gifts should have warmed her heart, but instead, it made her anger grow. She thought of how Ianai's children must have new clothes every month, while hers wore hand-me-downs from strangers. Her husband, Isi, returned home later that night, his face tired and defeated. I couldn't find any work today, he said, collapsing into a wooden chair. Uchi stared at him, her anger boiling. Do you know Ianai gave me these things as if I'm a beggar? She lives in a palace while we live in the shack. And I was even helping back then at work. Isi sighed. Uchi, be grateful. At least she's helping us. But Uchi couldn't let it go. The next day, she shared her frustration with her neighbor, a woman known for her sharp tongue and daring ideas. Ianai thinks she's better than you, he said, fanning the flames of jealousy. Do you think she gave you those things out of kindness? She wants to show off her wealth and make you feel small. Uchi's anger turned into resentment. I won't let her look down on me, she said. I'll show her. Had an idea. There's a native doctor on the outskirts of the village. He can change fortunes. Take these clothes and money to him. He'll use them to bring Ianai's family down. Uchi hesitated. Isn't that too much? Too much. E scoffed. She gave you scraps and made you feel grateful. Don't you want your children to have a better life? Achi thought about it. She remembered Ienai's luxurious house, her perfect family, and her promises to help Achi, promises that felt more like pity. Slowly, her bitterness overtook her better judgment. The next morning, Achi packed the clothes, shoes, and money and made her way to the native doctor. His house was hidden among trees, eerie and quiet. The smell of burning herbs filled the air. What do you want? The native doctor asked. I want to bring down the family who gave me these things, Achi said, her voice trembling with anger. I want their children to suffer and their wealth to vanish. The native doctor studied her for a moment. Are you ready to pay the price? Yes, Achi replied, her bitterness drowning out her fear. The native doctor examined the pile of clothes carefully, his sharp eyes narrowing as he turned over a small pair of shoes in his hands. He looked up at Achi. These clothes, he said, carry the essence of the children who wore them before. Because they belong to Ienai's children, the curse will target anyone who has worn them, starting with the family who first owned them. Their connection to the clothes is strong, and the spell will take hold of their health and fortune. Achi's heart raced as the implication sank in. You mean the sickness will affect Ienai's children? The native doctor nodded solemnly. Yes, because these were their clothes first. The bond is tied to their energy. The curse will bring sickness to the children who wore these garments, and it will not stop until their parents are brought to ruin. He spread the clothes across a wooden table, sprinkling them with a dark powder made of crushed herbs and ashes as he muttered incantations. His voice rose and fell, creating a rhythm that seemed to fill the room with an oppressive weight. These garments will carry your will, he said, his voice deep and commanding. Those who have worn them. Those who originally owned them will feel their vitality slip away. They will grow weak, and no medicine will heal them. Their parents will empty their coffers, searching for cures that will never work. Their wealth will vanish, and their happiness will crumble. Achi stared at the pile of clothes, a mix of fear and anger in her heart. She imagined Ienai's beautiful, healthy children falling ill and their lavish life slowly falling apart. Her bitterness drowned out her unease. Do it, she said, her voice trembling. I want them to suffer for thinking they could control me with their scraps. The native doctor continued his work, tying the clothes into a bundle with black and red threads. He held the bundle over a small fire, chanting louder now. The flames danced wildly, casting eerie shadows on the walls. It is done, he declared. The curse is tied to these clothes. The sickness will find those who have worn them, and their family's wealth will bleed away like water through their fingers. They will suffer as long as their pride keeps them blind. Achi felt a strange thrill of power as she watched the fire consume the final threads of the bundle. The thought of Ienai's perfect life unraveling brought a twisted satisfaction, but deep in her heart, a tiny voice whispered doubt, a voice she quickly silenced as she turned to leave the native doctor's hut. 1 week after they returned to Lagos, the curse began subtly creeping into Ienai's life like an unseen storm. At first, it was small things, her children feeling unusually tired or catching minor colds that lingered longer than expected. Ienai thought little of it. After all, children fell sick from time to time, and with Lagos's busy life, she chalked it up to stress and weather changes. But the illnesses grew worse. Her youngest child, Chi, was the first to show alarming symptoms. Chi, who had been a lively 3-year-old, started losing her appetite. Her once round cheeks became sunken, her energy drained. She could barely play with her siblings, and her laughter, once a constant melody in the house, was replaced by faint cries of discomfort. Ienai grew worried and took Chi to the family doctor, who ran several tests. Nothing serious, the doctor assured her. Maybe it's just a virus. She'll recover soon. But Chi didn't recover. Instead, her condition worsened. She developed a persistent fever, and her body became frail. Nights became a nightmare as Ienai and Chief Amati took turns monitoring Chi, who frequently woke up crying from pain they couldn't identify. Soon, the other 2 children, Kenna and Oba, began showing similar symptoms. Once robust and healthy, they started losing weight rapidly. Their once bright eyes were now dull, and they were plagued by constant fatigue. Kenna developed mysterious rashes on her skin that no cream could soothe, while Oba complained of severe headaches that left him wailing in agony. Desperate, Eni and Chief Amadi visited some of the best hospitals in Lagos, running every test the doctors could suggest. They were poked and prodded, scanned and observed. But the results were always the same. Nothing seemed to be medically wrong. "This is very unusual," one specialist finally admitted, his voice tinged with confusion. "They appear healthy on paper, but their symptoms tell another story. Perhaps you should consult another hospital." The lack of answers gnawed at Eni's spirit. She couldn't sleep at night, listening to her children's labored breathing. Chief Amadi, usually calm and composed, was beginning to unravel. His frustration over the mystery of their children's sickness mixed with the growing pressure from his struggling businesses. While Eni battled her children's declining health, Chief Amadi was fighting another war. His once thriving businesses began to crumble. Contracts he had secured for years were suddenly canceled without explanation. Longtime clients pulled out of deals, claiming uncertainty or competition from rivals. One of his factories suffered a sudden fire, resulting in millions of naira in damages. "We'll recover," Chief Amadi reassured Eni, but even he didn't believe it. His bank accounts, which had always been full, were draining quickly as he poured money into finding solutions for his children's mysterious illnesses and trying to keep his businesses afloat. Bills began to pile up: hospital bills, repair costs, and unpaid debts. For the first time in their marriage, Eni and Chief Amadi sat at their dining table late at night, discussing the possibility of selling some of their assets. "We have to save the children," Eni said tearfully. "I'll sell my jewelry if I have to." Chief Amadi shook his head. "We'll get through this. We just need to stay strong." The breaking point came one fateful night when Chi's condition worsened. Her breathing grew shallow, and her body burned with fever despite the medications. Eni cradled her baby in her arms, sobbing uncontrollably, as Chief Amadi frantically called their driver to rush them to the hospital. At the hospital, the doctors tried everything: oxygen masks, for drips, and emergency medication, but Chi's little body continued to weaken. Eni knelt in the corner of the room, praying desperately. "God, please save my children. Whatever it is, take it away," she cried, her voice hoarse from sobbing. As dawn broke, Chi stabilized, but her frailty left the doctors gravely concerned. "We've done all we can," the doctor told Eni and Chief Amadi. "You might want to consider taking her abroad for specialized treatment." One day, during a routine checkup with Dr. Ian, a devout and compassionate physician who usually came to the hospital on appointment once every 3 months, he asked Eni an unusual question. "Who have you helped recently?" Dr. Ian asked, his voice calm but firm. Eni stared at Dr. Ian, confused by his question. "Who have I helped recently?" she repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yes," Dr. Ian said, his gaze unwavering. "Have you given away any personal items, money, clothes, or anything that belonged to your family?" Eni hesitated, her mind racing. Then she remembered the trip to the village, the clothes, shoes, and money she had given to Achi. Her heart sank as the realization struck. "I gave some of my children's outgrown clothes and shoes to my former colleague in the village," she said slowly. "I also gave her some foodstuffs and money." Dr. Ian leaned back in his chair, his expression somber. "Those clothes were taken to a dark altar," he said, his voice filled with certainty. "Someone used them to curse your family. That's why your children are sick and your husband's business is failing." Eni's heart pounded in her chest. "Achi," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Why would she do this?" Dr. Ian sighed deeply. "Sometimes, envy can drive even the closest of friends to terrible acts. But this is not the end, Eni. God is still on your side. The battle is his, not